go ahead. Let's do a bit of revision from last week. Just 5 minutes, like we did last time. So last week we discussed DTP. So just in a quick one sentence, what is DTP to you, or what does it mean? So who wants to go first? Just 5 minutes revision from last week. So what does DTP? What's the purpose of DTP? Mark. Thanks very much. Thanks, man.
I'm just being honest.
No, no problem. Yeah.
Got that echo.
Yeah, there's an echo. I'm not sure. Let me test again. Hello? Yeah, so it's not Carlos. Maybe it's Anand. Carlos, you can unmute yourself. Let me mute Anand. Yeah, it's Anand. Anand, I'm not sure your mic is echoing. So Carlos, Carlos, can you help Marquis and Mark out? So from just quick 5 minutes, quick 5 minutes revision from last week. DTP, when we discussed DTP, what's the purpose of DTP?
First, DDP is just a state of a port can become a trunk port.
Yep. State
that's
of the
right.
port.
I knew it was something like that. I just couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's good. That's why we do like quick revision so we can just
My brain is
our
just
memory.
numb.
Can be trunk or
I thought it was
access.
like disturbing the peace or something like that.
Yeah. And what are the different states that are available for a port configuration?
Dynamic desirable, dynamic auto.
Nice one. Dynamic, desirable, dynamic, auto. And what's the difference between the two?
Dynamic desirable basically advertises that it wants to become a trunk port.
Yeah.
Versus an auto will not advertise, but it will listen for it to become a trunk port.
Yep. Nice one. Auto is kind of like passive, while this one is active. And then we talked about like the different combinations. So we won't go through everything. So let's just take one example. So let's say we take an example of a trunk port on one side and access port on the other side. What will happen, Carlos?
I'm not sure what type of port this is. I mean, if
So
it's
we've got trunk on one side, access on one side. What will happen? Nice one, Imran. So it was a trick question. So so it's no connectivity. So DTP won't operate here, so there will be no connectivity. So that's nice, Imran. But what if we have dynamic auto on one side and access on one side? What will happen? What will the switch? What operational mode? Access, yeah, good one. Okay, so that's like the main basics of it, and then we'll discuss a little bit about VTP, which we won't go into because we assume we all know DTP now. Okay, so today we're discussing switch security. So let's take this from a bit of a practical standpoint. So you're a network administrator in a company, and you've been given a task, and your task is to implement. So you've got like a little office. So Myra says if we don't, yeah, exactly, yeah. So switch secure. So you've been given a task to deploy new switches in your new location. So you are the network admin. You've gone there. You've deployed the new switches and the connectivity for the users are working. Now it's your job to secure the new switches that you've deployed. So what are the considerations that you make when you're given this kind of work? What are the things that you do? In what way will you go about this work? So Mark, I mean, we've put you in an office, you've deployed the switches, now it's time to secure the switches that you've just deployed. So what are the things that you consider as a network admin? What are the things that you consider? What are the steps that you do?
I mean, what kind of devices are going to be connecting to it? Or where the ports are going to be? Or
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
What kind of devices will be connecting to the switch and how many devices? Like,
What kind of devices? And why is that information important to you? What kind of devices?
oh, I mean, so you don't want people plugging in that are just random connecting to the switches, have open ports that are not being used, things like that.
Okay, let's put it down. Open ports not being used. Yeah, but in what way will you approach it? So how will you go about? So now you know the devices, you know that, maybe you've got 20 users in the offices, they've all got Windows PCs that they'll be using to connect. But in what way, as a network admin, in what way will you be thinking, oh, I need to secure my switch in this way. I need to secure my switch in this way. I need to secure my switch in this way. Yeah, nice one. So Imran has brought one good point up, which is part of the things we're discussing today. Imran says port security. So Imran, what is port security? When you said, okay, you consider port security, what is port security?
Port security is a basic function for security to limit the MAC address, and we can. Uh, Let me go to other room.
No problems. Right. Yep. So that's a really nice one. So when you're considering how do I secure my switch infrastructure, Imran's brought a good point saying port security, limit MAC address. Does anyone want to chime in why Imran is going to the other room? Marquis, what do you think? What's your thought on this?
As far as port security.
Yeah, about port
Um,
security.
I mean, I'm just getting to the base of it, the whole port security and everything. I know you can restrict access to certain ports on the actual switch or whatsoever. It's different. When you go on port security, I think it's three different configurations you can make on the actual switch itself to enable port security or whatsoever. I know it's a range of, because I'm still learning this stuff, so
Yep,
I'm just.
yep. No problems. Yeah, that's all right. That's absolutely all right. That's why we're
I
having
know,
this.
I know one of them is restrict. Um, I
Shut
forgot.
down and protected.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, you're right. So you're right in saying restrict. So we'll get into the details later. So let's start first of all with the philosophy behind it, with how you approach this kind of task of securing a switch infrastructure. You configure, in one sense, you configure port security. Okay, what does
Yeah,
port security do? It limits MAC
we
addresses.
we
What
limit the MAC
what
address, and we can tell them statically that these MAC address
yeah.
will be given the access, and if somebody else connected with other MAC address, the port will be disabled or shut down.
So what's the reason why you want to implement something like that? Because the
It's like man in the middle, or it's for the what were Ragu points, something like they said Ragu points.
verbal point.
and you don't want nobody to just connect no hub or nothing and just eat up all the band. I mean, it's just a lot of security versus as far as things, especially if you like in a production environment.
Hmm.
You don't want everybody just to be plugging in no cable and just able to access the network or whatsoever.
Yeah,
Because that'll
yeah,
create a lot of vulnerabilities.
yeah. Yeah, actually, that's right. But I want us to break this down. Like, so we'll break it down to the basic level. So it's really, really clear and there's no confusion about it. So, Imran, okay, now, you remember when we said something? So we used to say this a lot in our Hangout where we say it's easy to make IT confusing. All we need to do is throw out a lot of terms, not explain the
Hmm.
terms we're throwing out, and people leave more confused than when they started. So you've just thrown out a point. You said, "Oh, I'll implement port security." Okay, what's port security? Uh, why would you implement port security? Well, because of man in the middle attack. What do you mean by man in the middle attack? What does that mean?
When we enable port security on the port and we tell them, okay, let's say this port is will allow one or two or five MAC addresses, and we give that MAC addresses to them.
Mm.
And if somebody else try to connect via that port, or like somebody else try to put a port as access port, or try to put a switch, then it will get disabled. So it will like not allow you to manipulate with the other stuff like STP, making a root bridge, so you don't, somebody cannot just plug the cable in and then make it the root bridge, or take all the packet out and then with the tools or Wireshark read all the stuff, or DCP information, CDP, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Cannot just. I mean, this is a really good point. Really, really nice point. I hope we are clear with what Imran explained. That one of the reasons is because if we configure something like port security, what we can say is um, only this device is allowed to access our network through this port. And if any other device plugs into that port, the port can go into different mode. It can shut down itself. So that's a way to protect our switching infrastructure. So that way, someone can just come with a switch and plug it into a network, and someone can just come with a different computer that is not secure and plug it into a network. So that's a good point. But that's like a secondary reason. So I'll put this as B. That's like a secondary reason for deploying port security. Does anyone know the first reason why you want to deploy port security?
Keep your job.
Well, that's a good reason. That's from a business perspective, to keep your job. But in what way? How will port security help you to keep your job? Carlos, what do you think?
I mean, simple. I mean, to me, the port security, you have the three different modes. So you're like either restricting
Hmm.
unknown devices from connecting,
Hmm.
so you know what's on your network.
Hmm.
I mean, that kind of leads into the more specific example of B,
Hmm.
but also you can limit the number of devices that are getting on the particular hardware, if that's a factor.
Limit the number of devices. So
Yeah, because if you
can you
specify, if you,
expand on that? Because you're close to
if
the answer that I was looking for.
well, I mean, if you're specifying port security to look at particular MAC addresses, you're essentially defining how many devices could connect to the switch.
It's also something to do with DSCP, because if you put so many devices, like somebody tried to plug the switch, and when the switch is plugged and then it plugs more, and then your DSCP, he requests to DSCP server for the more IP address, and when there are no more IP addresses, then maybe the new device who is booting up cannot access because there is no available DSCP addresses.
Yeah, that's one good one also. So there. So that will explain like part of the things that you said, like maybe um see prevent issues. So everything you're saying is actually close to what we're talking about. Prevent issues like DHCP attacks. So actually, both this one and this one, both A and C, are related to the answer that we're looking for. So what happens? So let's try to break this down a bit, so to make it really, really clear. So
It's
what?
like accounting how much device like you are connected and the expected device are connected.
Yeah, I mean you're right. You're absolutely right. But let's go this way. Let's try to so in your network you have a switch, right? You have your switch on your network. So on your network, your computers will plug into the switches. So on these switches, so once I say it, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, but it's just a way to put it. So you plug your computers into the switch. So on this switch, there's something called a MAC address table, right? Or in other words, Cisco calls it the CAM table sometimes. Yeah. So you have the CAM table, the MAC address table. This CAM table or MAC address table, what's the purpose? What does it store? It maps.
The layer 2 address.
Yes,
Shit,
exactly.
MAC address table overflow.
Good one. Thanks very much, Iman. You got
That was
exactly. Good one. Good point.
It make the MAC address table overflow. You know, when it's limited, the Gen 1 device cannot log in because there is no You
Exactly.
know,
Because, for example, think, yeah, so you absolutely know what I'm talking about. So I know it's just a way to put it. So MAC address table just marks port number to um, MAC addresses. So if this PC has a MAC address of AAA, this MAC address table will say AAA is plugged into port FAS02. So what I could do if I'm an attacker is I know that this thing is got a limited resource, because that's one thing about our network devices. They all have limited resources. The bandwidth on this port is limited. The bandwidth on the backplane of the switch or the fabric of the switch, it's limited. The bandwidth on this on-click port is limited. The memory of the switch is limited. The CPU of the switch is limited. So all I have to do is overwhelm the device and just keep pumping out MAC address numbers that don't exist. And I say, okay, you've got BBB, CCC coming out from this port, and the switch will just keep learning them and learning them and learning them and learning them. And it gets to the point where it's filled up, legitimate MAC addresses are not being learned, users are not able to access the network because the MAC address table is full and stuff like that. So that's one good reason, or the primary reason why you deploy something like port security, to prevent against stuff like MAC address table overload.
or
Yeah,
instability because
yeah, exactly. Or instability. Good one. So we find we got there we got there eventually, little by little we're getting there. So
because I didn't read the topic. I just it's like 6 months before I read it, but yeah,
yep.
just
So is that clear, or does anyone have a question regarding that? Is that clear? Mark, is that clear?
Very good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's put that to prevent. So this like the philosophy behind it. Oh, I've been tasked to secure my switch network, or I'll deploy something like port security. Why? I want to protect against number one, MAC address table overflow. I want to protect against users, which is number two, which Imran described properly, which I want to prevent against users using the switch ports in a wrong way, or in a way that violates our policies. So we have a policy on our network where we say, don't bring your own devices and plug them into the network if they don't have antivirus or something or things like that. So you can protect your network this way. So yeah, to prevent MAC address overflow attacks. Okay, so in what other way do you think you consider when you've been tasked with securing your network? What other thing will you think of? So Carlos this time, so we'll get the next idea from Carlos. What other things? So just don't think about it theoretically. Just think about it as I'm in a network now. My job is to secure this switch network, not the one network, not the big network, just this switched layer 2 network.
I
How
want
do
to
I do
make
that?
sure that only authorized device connected to my network.
Good ones, very good ones. Even so, only authorized devices or users can access what, Imran?
Network or my resources.
Yeah,
Network or my resources.
network or resources. In this case, the network of resources will be our switches. We want to make sure that not everybody can come to our network and all of a sudden access our switches and start tagging VLANs, and doing a lot of stuff. There was it 2009 or 2010? Um, Luzek, there was a group called Lozek, really popular hacking group like this, that hacked into Sony. And one of the things that they leaked out was the configuration. Yeah, good one, my wife. So that was what, yeah. So my wife, right? So authentication, yeah. So, and one of the things that they leaked out was the configuration for some of their routers and for some of their switches. So it just leaked out the configuration and put it out on the internet and stuff like that. So you don't want people just to be accessing your routers and switches anyhow. So how do you go about this? So Carlos, what's your idea? What's your thought? How will you go about securing access to your switches?
I mean, securing access to your switches. If you're not authorized devices, you just use port security.
Yeah, port
Um,
security.
so you could have a defined list of secured MAC addresses, or specify the number of secure MAC addresses for the ports.
Yeah, you're right. You're starting from number five.
Okay.
The most basic one, the most basic method of securing access to your switches.
Well, I mean, you could define it as an access port type simply before even port security, like that. If it's only going to be a host computer on that port, make sure they're not trunking or anything like that.
Okay, yeah, maybe yeah, things like access, um,
But if you're saying
port.
accessing the switch, okay, I mean, yeah, you can put like enable passwords, configure
Yeah,
passwords.
exactly. But we'll put that one there because that's a good point also that you made about access ports, picking your port access ports. So you said we'll do something like passwords. Thanks very much, Mayo, and thanks very much. Yeah, so passwords. And in what way can you enable passwords on your switches? Or what are the ways that you can enable passwords on your switches? So you mentioned that you can enable just password or secret, right? But in what other way can you enable passwords? Yeah, good one again, banners. But again, in passwords,
I guess like you mean SSH or other ways to
exactly
remote into
another
the
good
switch.
one. So let's put that down again. So IV, um,
Your virtual terminals or
yep, access protocols, things like SSH, banners, um,
generating RSA and DSA keys,
yep,
which you probably have to do before you can even set it. So
things like access protocols, um,
Telnet? Were you asking for Telnet?
yep,
Telnet there?
yep. So let me put that down also. So my was says telnet, so things like that. Um, then in terms of like passwords, there are two types of passwords that we can set. We can set local passwords, or we can set standard AAA passwords. So because what we can have on our network is we can have um, what we can do is we can have a switch air and a switch air and another switch air, and then we go on this one and we say, yeah, the password to log in is Cisco. The password to log into this one is Cisco 123. The password to log into this one is, you know, maybe anything and stuff like that. But what you probably want to do is you can do that, or you can have a central server which is like in many cases called the AAA server. And on the AAA server, you have the user database, like maybe user one, and the password for user one is user one pass. And then you have user two, and the password for user two is user two pass. And then you just simply direct the switches to say if someone tries to log in, go and check this guy. So that reduces your work because now you've centralized your authentication. So you can use AAA rather than just using local passwords. So that way, yeah,
Hey,
radius and held up. So that's part of it. Marcus, you were
hey,
saying
Dave.
something. Yeah.
Hey, isn't that with that AAA authentication, isn't that 802.1x?
Well, we'll talk about that one also. So 802.1x is something different, but we'll talk about because this one, yeah, 802.1x is a bit different. Here's the difference. You can use AAA in two different modes. So AAA can be used in two different modes. Does anyone know what those modes are? So there are two modes that you can use AAA on your Cisco devices. There are two modes. Anyone? Imran, what do you think? There are two ways.
No, I have no knowledge about the AAA because
Uh, okay, are you talking about local and remotes? Mm,
No, not at all. So it's not local and remote. I'm talking about the modes.
the
So
modes?
yeah, so you have something called the character mode. Anyone heard of that before? Character mode? and packet mode.
No.
Okay.
So this basic mode, just to make them simple, they are not complex at all. This is what they mean. Two modes that you can use AAA: character mode or packet mode. Character mode is the one that we described. You're protecting access to your switches. So a network admin SSH into this switch and wants to access. This switch will go and talk to the AAA server and say, hey, is this guy's credentials, is he accurate or not? The other mode will be this. You have a user here. So it's something kind of like, it's not, it's kind of like you have a user here and the user plugs into your network. Before this user can access your network, this user will be asked to enter their usernames and their password. That is packet mode. In other words, this one is for administration, while this one is for the data. So a user plugs into this network. They plug their computer. So this is different from port security, where you're just storing MAC addresses. This is a user plugs in. The switch will say, hold on, before I allow you to start communicating on your VLAN, you have to provide a username and password. So the user provides a username and password on their operating system. The switch passes it to the AAA server, and then the AAA server authenticates the user and says, allow the guy to access the network or don't allow the guy to access the network. So that is packet mode. Packet mode is where you have something like 802.1x, because 802.1x is exactly what we just described now. 802.1x is port-based authentication. That's all that it means. It just means port-based authentication. A user plugs their laptop or their computer into the network. Before they are given access, they must authenticate themselves. That is different from an admin SSH into this network, and before they are allowed to administrate that switch, they must authenticate. So it's two different modes, even though they are
Uh,
using AA server. Carry on, Myra.
yeah. I also want to just point out. Um, this is Cisco, right? But
Yeah,
you also have like 802.x implemented in other devices, other proprietary devices like Microsoft has it and all that. But the
yeah,
major thing about like what David is saying is
yeah,
that for the character mode, you're already in the network.
yeah.
You understand? You already have access to the network. You can send packets through
Mm-hmm.
the network, right?
Yeah.
But you just want to make sure that you're authorized to access that particular switch
Device, yeah.
in their device. But the packet mode, we don't want to risk the fact that your PC or your something is we don't even want your apps or anything that you're sending out to go past that port.
Yeah.
So what happens is that you'll be presented usually a web if it's web based, you can be presented like a website whereby you can enter your username and password. And what also happens is that it will send some other like checks, maybe client checks on your to check maybe your your antivirus is updated, to check whether your Windows, if you're using Windows, is using the latest or approved updates
Mm-hmm.
and all that. So that once you have all those updates and we've checked all that, including your username and authorization, your username and authorization, all that, then we'll now send that information, we'll verify that information with the AA server, and the AA server will now tell maybe that switch that, you know what, you can allow him access to a particular VLAN. So change that port VLAN to another number
Yeah.
or to the appropriate VLAN for it. So maybe VLAN for accounting, we'll
Mm-hmm.
give you the VLAN for accounting,
Yeah.
so that so when you connect it to that port, you can actually the VLANs can actually change.
Yeah.
So based on your authentication and all that. I know that's how was done in Nortel, but
Yeah.
I've not done that in Cisco
This
yet.
one. Yeah. Marcus, does that answer your question? Does it answer your question? So it's
Yes, sir.
similar, but it's just two different modes. So one is you're securing the network. You're not even you're saying you plug into the network. Hey, before you even start pinging the domain controller, you have to authenticate yourself. So one is for the user, the other one is for the admin, and we'll talk about all this today. So
Okay.
let's go back to this one. So let's put password and secret and put AAA here. So any other thing that you think of if you've been tasked with, again, just securing your switch, just your switch infrastructure. Because now it's left to you to make sure that it is secure. Any other thing that you think of that you have to do. Because again, this is like what goes on in the real world. When you're working, this is like the kind of stuff that you'll be asked to do. You'll be asked to like do stuff like, hey, we have 3 new switches. We have this little office that the company just bought. Go put in those 3 new switches there. But you can't just go and put in the 3 new switches. Yeah, good one. Disable unused ports. So disable unused ports. But disable unused ports. But you can't just go and just put in the switches and then later someone comes into the network and you experience something like MAC address overflow. All your other colleagues will blame you. Well, if you have a blame culture, they will blame you for that because you should have secured the switch infrastructure when you deployed it. So it's part of your job. So actually, like all these things that we've discussed, Cisco have a framework for it. So this will make things more simple rather than us trying to, take like all these things. Cisco has a framework for it. Does anyone know what the framework is called? Cisco has
Are
a
you talking about the
framework.
AA framework?
No, not exactly. But the AA framework is included as part of this framework. So Cisco has a framework called NFP, which means Network Foundation Protection. And NFP simply means this. If you've been tasked to secure a network, there are 3 areas that you should look at. Number 1, you look at the control. Or maybe not control first. Let's say management. Number 2, you look at the control. Number 3, you look at the data. So Cisco is saying if you've been tasked with securing any network, these are the 3 things that you should look at. Number A, you have to secure the management. So all the things that we've mentioned, they can all come under one of these 3 categories. So it makes things easier for you as a network admin. So what do you think would be under something like management? Things like access.
Max number of attempts to log in, or
Yeah, exactly. Things like access to the switch. So ways that people can manage the switch. People can use remote access or local access. Things like what you just said. Maximum login. Things like your AAA will come under this one also. Things like your whether you use Telnet or SSH will come under this also. Things like whether you use SNMP version 1 or SNMP version 2C or SNMP version 3 will come into this one also. Because one is secure, one is insecure, or 2 are secure, 2 are insecure. So all those want to come under management. So you have to look at your switch and say to yourself, in what ways can I manage this switch? How do I secure those ways? I'm not sure if that is clear. Is that clear? So you have to look at the switch and say, okay, I've just deployed these 5 new switches. In what ways can people access them to manage them? How do I secure those ways?
so like if you have any physical ports too that
Exactly.
possibly talk on VLAN 1 or whatever you can manage the switch from.
Exactly. So let's break this down a bit. In what ways can I manage the switch? What are the ways that I can manage the switch? There are only few ways that you can manage your switch.
Virtual terminal, SSH,
Good
and
one.
physical port or console port.
Yep, virtual terminal.
So VTY.
Yep, VTY. Let's put that VTY.
Which is
Console.
like a telnet session, right?
Yep, exactly. So that'll be telnet or SSH. Console. What else?
How about HTTP web-based?
Good one. Very good one. Because that's like one thing. You must
just disable it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like one thing. So those are the kind of things that you have to sit down. I like frameworks for one thing. They make our life simple as administrators, because all I have to do is follow a framework, and I can be sure that it's at least covered majority of the things. So for example, yeah, carry on.
Sorry, a quick question.
Yeah.
That NFP is a part of CCNA routing and switching or security?
It's part of security. But
I knew I was going to do that.
Yeah, So, but here's the reason why we are bringing this one up, because yeah, we're going to be talking about port security and everything, but just to throw kind of like a real world scenario, so people know, how to approach things from the real world. So that's the reason why we're throwing this in. So it's not like, like CCNA
This is
routing and
gun
switching.
safety.
Yeah. So it's not as if this is CCNA routing and switching. We'll be asking you about this. But so that let's say tomorrow you go for an interview and they're asking you. So if we put you on a network, how will you secure a network? You won't go, I have no idea, even though I'm CCNA. So that's the reason. So you'll be able to at least say something, logical and, not, not at all. Just say NFP, to confuse them. If you just say, I just use NFP, you just go management, data and control. They'll be like, wow, this guy. So,
This
so
guy knows a lot.
exactly.
Yeah,
Be,
we're gonna need you to
be,
audit and secure all our network hardware first week.
just
Yeah.
don't have the likes of Paul Lampron on the interview board, otherwise you're screwed.
Paul, you mean no, no,
Because Paul will take you up on NFP any day. Oh goodness.
yeah, but here's the other thing is that CCNA is good, but one thing I've realized is that many people expect a lot of things. If you say you're CCNA, they expect you to know a lot of things that are not in the CCNA curriculum.
True, that's very true.
So it's like, I'm not sure. I think it's Cisco Marketing. They've done a good job of marketing CCNA as this huge certification that once you mention CCNA, I mean CCNA where I currently work, they're like, whoa, you're CCNA. They expect me to know voice and data center. I'm like, hold on, no, no. They didn't teach us all of that. They didn't teach us security. They didn't teach us data center. They didn't teach us voice. We just know routing and switching. That's all. We don't even know like routing, to a big detail. We just know little routing, little
We can
switching.
make it talk.
Exactly. But that's the thing is that they expect you to know a lot. So that's the reason why we're just throwing this one in. So if that comes up, you at least know one way to approach it. And then the next thing is, let's say you were to do CCNA security later. This won't be new to you anymore. So once you're doing it, you're like, yeah, I've heard this before. You can pick it up much easier. Yeah. Okay. So let's carry on. So we have like the management plane. We have the control plane. Control plane will be things like the management protocols. What do you think that will consist of? Things will be like something like your spanning tree protocol. You know, things that. So control is network devices talking with each other.
I guess like any limiting,
Like what?
any kind
Trying
of
to agree.
limitations. Like
Putting authentication.
Authentication will be under management.
No, I mean link to link authentication, like in
Oh,
frame relay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, things like that. So things like yeah, you're right. Frame, relay, things like our routing protocols. But again, we're talking mainly,
OSPF,
yeah,
EIGRP.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
those
this
those
one,
also.
yeah, carry on.
No, I mean you're right. Like OSPF,
Yeah,
EIGRP, they have authentication too.
yeah. So you have your switches talking with one another. So in other words, you think, okay, these devices are talking to one another in this way. How can I protect this? So like what Mayowa said, if you have OSPF on your router, OSPF is talking to OSPF on the other router. One thing you can do is, rather than just configure OSPF, you can configure OSPF with authentication. So that way you're securing your control plane. Then the last thing, of course, will be your data plane, which is like your user. So this is where something like 802.1x will come in.
wouldn't control also tell you what type of traffic,
What type of traffic? Like in what way? What do you mean by what
like
type of
which
traffic?
I guess this all falls under routing, but like probably what ACLs it could receive.
Yeah. So those ones, yeah,
Yeah, access lists.
yeah. So that will come under control plane also. That
Like
could
probably
also,
not the actual list, but like which ones it could receive.
No, that's a great contribution, Carlos.
yeah,
Access lists
yeah,
is actually control.
yeah. It can come under management also, because actually we can use access lists to limit management
Oh, you're
and
right.
to tighten management to say, okay, only people on this subnet can manage this switch. Um, Then data is actually like the normal traffic of user traffic that is passing, which is like there's really nothing that much on the switch level because this is where you have something like IPsec, your encryption and stuff like that. So you're securing communication from a user device to another device, maybe from a user to the server. So this is the actual user communication that is actually passing through your network devices. So you're securing them. So that is like
Uh,
the data plane.
where will you add proxies? Where will proxies be? Is it in data?
Proxies, you mean like web proxy and stuff like that?
Yeah, web proxies, just to make sure that or things like IDS, intrusion detectors.
So those
Right.
ones are,
My bad.
I think those ones are probably, let's see, because if I go IDS, I'm not sure if they today does IDS fit into this plane at all.
Yeah, I think it
Intrusion
does for
detection.
data. Some I'm not sure if it's some routers or special Cisco devices can actually do. Maybe they've stopped it now, but at the time they could do intrusion detection,
Yeah.
intrusion
Um,
prevention.
Mhm.
maybe that would follow like NetFlow on the data layer.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. They'll check the data layer and they'll find out what kind of traffic pattern you have.
Yeah.
And if your traffic pattern diverts from that, they either send an alert or stuff, or if you maybe ban some, or you can use access list for that too. But
Yeah.
to
Okay. I
create
see
some,
what you mean. Yeah.
I
yeah,
think that'd be like NetFlow.
Yeah. So that would be something like under data then because it's protecting user communication.
yeah,
So communication of the user. Because this one again, remember this one is not actually so your this is the main reason why you have your network because of the data that you want to transfer. So these ones are just like, you have to manage the things that are passing those data. That is this one. So the things that are passing those data, they have to collaborate with one another. That is control. Then the actual data that you actually have your network to pass. That is on the data plane. So that's like makes it easy in terms of you're securing a network. Just follow this framework and try to figure out what you deploy to secure your network. Okay, so let's go start from the one that Imran mentioned, port security. Port security. So let's bring up packet tracer because we'll do some show here. Okay, so with port security, we've mentioned that the main purpose is number one, preventing like MAC address, table overflow, and then prevent user violation of like the policies that we have for our network, where users are plugging, devices that they should not be plugging in, they're plugging them into our network. So that's the purpose. So how does port security work? So that's the first thing we'll talk about. How does it do its job? So who wants to start? So how does port security go about protecting CAM overflow and protecting user evaluation? My one says left to right. Okay, yeah, so let's go. So we've got Alexander here. Okay, Alexander, yeah, let's start with you.
Sure. Here's a
Uh, Basically, it does it on port security. Why did I say that? It does on MAC addresses.
MAC addresses. And how does it do? As in, how does it? So we know that it stores the MAC addresses that can access the network via port. It stores them, but
Mm,
how does it do like the whole process that it's doing?
Not sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So let's break it down. So to help us a bit, let's break it down. So there are three concepts that port security use. There's the sub concept of something called secure MAC addresses.
Yeah.
There's the concept of the violation. There's the concept of maximum, and there's the concept of timer. So this is how port security. These are the four main things that port security use to do what it does, which is protect your MAC address table, protect user from plugging in devices that they should not be plugging into your network. No, no problems, Mara. Yeah. Okay. So we've with secure MAC addresses, what does that mean? Like secure MAC addresses, when we say secure MAC addresses.
That basically means that you're looking to match a specific address, a specific source address.
Nice one. Nice one. Very, very nice one. So match specific source MAC addresses. In other words, secure MAC addresses means these are the MAC addresses that are allowed to communicate on this port. That's all that it means. It means we have a switch. Again, let's go back to our switch picture here. We have a switch here, and we have a computer that plugs into the switch here. And what we're saying is, when we say the secure MAC address for this port is saying to this port, only source MAC address AAA can communicate via this port. So that's all that it means. We're only defining these are the MAC addresses that can communicate via this port. Now, there are 3 ways that these MAC addresses can be defined. What are those 3 ways? Carlos, you're next. So we'll go left to right, like Mayowa said. Mark.
What did you say?
Yeah, so Mark says it usually means that. No, not at all.
I'm kind of hiding in the back of the classroom here.
See, so Carlos, your question is there are 3 ways. So we said port security does what it does using 4 concepts. One of them is the concept of secure MAC addresses, which just simply means these are the MAC addresses that can communicate on this port. Now, there are 3 ways that we can define these MAC addresses that can communicate on this port. What are those 3 ways?
You mean like protect, restrict, and shut down?
No. So that comes under violation.
Okay.
So there are 3 ways that we can define the secure MAC addresses. No problem.
Like a dynamic or static, like whether you just learn it by when they plug it in?
Good one. Yeah. So one way is dynamically. So when we say dynamically, what do you mean?
As in, like, it'll listen for the first MAC address or first set number of whatever you set MAC addresses to learn that connects on that port.
Yeah, good one. And what's the second one?
I assume a static.
Static, good one. And what does that mean?
Predefine, you would manually enter it before.
Yeah. And what's the last one?
I don't know.
You think about it. I know you know. It's just look in Imran's answer. Let's help a bit. Imran's answer.
Sticky.
Yep. Sticky.
So I assume that's once it learns it, or it'll stay.
So Imran, you're the one that mentioned sticky. So can you explain sticky to us? Imran, we know you're there. Okay, he says be right back. Okay, yeah. So Mark, Mark, you want to give this a go?
But isn't a sticky just it like kind of saves a dynamically learned address, and you can set like the first number from that it stays sticky, so to speak.
Does anyone want to explain the difference between sticky and dynamic? So you're right, Carlos. Sticky and dynamic are the same. There's just a little slight difference between them.
Ain't it with sticky or whatsoever? It like learns the MAC address.
Mm-hmm. But that's dynamic. It learns the MAC address. So what's the difference between sticky and dynamic?
I think sticky. I think sticky actually learns it or whatsoever, and instead of like predefining the MAC address, I guess that'd be statically. I don't know,
So
kind
let,
of
let me let me
slow.
bring up a switch here. So let's bring up a switch. So let's bring up a switch and let's go into this switch and let's see. So what's the difference between sticky and dynamic? So you're right, Carlos. So sticky is dynamic. There's only one difference. So if I go enable and I go interface fast 01 switch port. So first thing to realize is that no, sorry. Oh, actually, let's go to my one because I know my one. I know you will answer it, so that's why I was trying to skip it.
And
Wait,
they
wait, what gives you the guarantee? Look, don't believe me, man. Don't
and
believe
they
everything I say.
and they
We're gonna spin a bottle next.
hey,
All right, okay. I'm going. Look, I really don't remember it that well, but I'm looking at the word sticky means that like mud or sticky mud. Once we learn it, you keep it, and that's it. And the other one
Exactly.
is you
hey,
learn, always keep learning new ones.
Exactly. So that's like the main difference, Carlos. So I mean that's like in fact I think that's like I never even thought of like that explanation. So sticky means once you learn it, you keep it. Dynamic means you learn it, it goes away. So this is the difference. If I learn, let's go back to the switch. If I go to this switch, so number one thing to realize is that you must put your switches in static access mode. Otherwise, if I go switch port security, enter, it's going to reject my command because this is by default in dynamic. Is that dynamic auto or dynamic desirable? This 2960, I think it's dynamic auto. So this by default in dynamic auto, so it's going to reject the switch. So you have to first of all put it in static access. So if I go switch port mode access first, then if I go switch port security, and then there's MAC address. So number one, I can specify a MAC address. So if I specify a MAC address, that is the static. Oh, I, I like with the Max post, man. Yep, I'm in favor of left to right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I vote for it. I vote for left to right.
I've been saved.
Yeah. So if I go switch port security MAC address, you can specify the MAC address manually. But again, there's nothing called dynamic here. That is because
Mhm,
dynamic is the default mode. So if I just
mhm,
go port security, port security, and press enter, it's in dynamic mode. It will learn the addresses dynamically. That's the
mhm,
default. So then I can now go port security MAC address to put it in static mode where I enter the MAC address. So
mhm,
if I say dynamically, the switch will learn the MAC addresses, store them in the secure MAC address table for the port, but it will not keep them. So if you restart the switch, it's all gone. But sticky is it will learn them, it will save them in the running config. And
mhm,
if you save the running config, it will save them in the startup config. So in other words, when you reboot, those MAC address security, those MAC addresses, those secure MAC address will remain even after you reboot. Whereas if you
mhm,
just put it in dynamic, if you reboot dynamic, there's no way that's going to put it in startup config.
mhm,
But if you put
mhm,
sticky, it simply means I'll put you in running config, and if you save the running config, it will put the MAC address in startup config.
mhm,
I think you have to write the config, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
it's sticky.
exactly. Yeah. So you will put it in running config, but you still have to do um, you still have to do
And the dynamic doesn't store it in a running config?
It doesn't. So dynamic doesn't store it in running config, so you can't save it in startup config. So dynamic, if you shut down the port, and if you do short, no short, it's gone. If you reboot the switch, it's gone. So those are the three different modes. So they are basically, so dynamic is also sticky, but like the good way that
But if
mine
you
works,
also do a sticky and you don't write the config, then it won't stay either.
if you don't rightly config like how?
Alright. But I guess that's true for anything.
Yeah. As in, okay. Oh, you mean if you put the sticky and you don't save the running config, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. So then it won't stay. So that's right. So sticky means lends it and keeps it. But then let's put the thing that Carlos said in terms of you still have to save. You still have to save running config. Otherwise, you still lose it anyway. So okay. So those are the three ways that we can. So that's the concept of secure MAC
I mean,
address.
the reason why I say that is like because you could technically set the setting
Mm-hmm.
and then write the config,
Yeah.
but it's gonna learn the addresses.
Yeah.
And then unless you write the config again and restart, is it gonna forget it?
Yeah. You have to write. So you have
You know what I
to.
mean? Like in the time you set the setting and the time it learns the MAC addresses.
Yeah. So
I think you have to.
that's a good one. That's a good one because what Carlos is saying is this. So let's say I go into a switch and I configure it for sticky, but then I do, my right config, but then the switch hasn't learned any MAC addresses. Then maybe an hour later, somebody comes in and plugs in a machine into the switch port. It learns the MAC address, but does that mean if I restart at that point, it doesn't keep it because I've not done, save, run, start again? You get the point?
Yeah.
So that's a really good, valid point. So that's another one that we'll have to look at, or if anyone actually knows about that now. And Powell is not here today. so, so, so Carlos,
Yeah.
I
I pasted it in chat. That's why I ask.
Okay, to preserve dynamically length sticky MAC addresses and configure them on a port following boot up or reboot. Oh, okay, so you must. Okay. So that's from a Cisco documentation. Is that from a Cisco documentation, Carlos?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, so that means we must. So in other words, yeah, you're right then. So in other words, we still have to go into the switch, even if it learns it like 2 hours later to do copy run start. Otherwise, it's gonna lose it anyway after reboot.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. So that's like the first concept, which is like the secure MAC addresses. So the next one would be, okay, if we configure and say to a switch port, you learn 2 MAC addresses and that's it. If a third MAC address now comes on that port, there are 3 violations that we can set. So I think we should start from the middle. Who agrees that we should start from the middle?
You clearly skipped yourself. I don't know what you're talking about.
Does anyone agree that we should start from the middle?
I'm not sure what's the middle. Is that
Right,
Mark?
the cat guy.
Yeah.
What? I'm on the right on my screen. This is a setup. I knew it.
Okay, David, type out a list on the screen. No one can move.
Oh.
I'm shutting down this activity.
No. So what? So Alexander said I skipped myself. I can answer that. Actually, like, yeah, we have to give Mark and Mark quiz an opportunity. So Mark and Mark quiz, you fill this in for us. Violations. So what are the violations that you can set for port security?
What be protect?
Yeah, good one. Protect. And what does protect do?
I mean, protect. I guess it just caused it discards the frames of whatsoever
Good one, very good one. It
that's having
discards
a
the frame.
violation. So it'll
Mm-hmm.
discard the frames that's
Yeah,
that
good one.
occurs in violation or whatsoever that's having a violation.
Yeah, good one.
Um,
What about which other one?
I know it's another one is I think it's restrict.
Good one,
Mm-hmm.
restrict. And what does
And
restrict do?
shutdown.
Um, dang, I'm trying to remember. Just work with me. Just work with me.
Yeah, yeah, well,
I know restrict does the. I know it discards the frames as well, and also I believe it sends some type of syslog or any messages or whatsoever. It send it to the appropriate. If they got a SMT a SNMP configured or whatsoever, it send a
Mm-hmm.
syslog there about the violation
yeah,
that occurred.
yeah. Nice
Um,
one. So very, very nice one. Very, very nice one, Marquise. And very nice one too, Mark. Because Mark has given us the last one, which is shut
shut
down.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, shut down.
So
That's the last one.
yeah. So the difference between protect and restrict is that protect you only discard the frame. Restrict will discard the frame, but it will increase the violation counter, and not only increase the violation counter, it will also like send syslog or SNMP trap messages. Whereas protect will
See,
just be like, I don't care. Yeah, nice one, Marquise.
see, I'm trying. I'm trying to get that nomenclature like you guys, man.
Yeah, it's good to have the nomenclature, man. I tell you, the nomenclature can confuse also sometimes. But that's excellent. And Mark also, that's excellent. So you go protect, which is just basically I'm discarding the frame. I don't do anything else. I don't increase the violation counter. I don't do anything. I just silently drop the frame. Restrict is I will drop the frame, but I will let you know I've dropped the frame. I will increase the violation counter. If you have SNMP configured or syslog configured, I'll log the message in syslog. I'll send an SNMP message, an SNMP trap message to say, there's been a violation. Whereas shutdown, what shutdown will just do? What does shutdown do?
Disable the interface and just shut it
Exactly.
down.
Yeah. Or let's just put it this way: put the interface in error disabled. No, that's not good. So let's take this down to something smaller. So shutdown puts the interface in error disabled state. So nice one, in error disabled state, which is basically, it's not functioning. No one can send anything on that port until an administrator goes short, no short. So that leads us to another question, which we'll call this, let's just call this B2. So for the shutdown um, um, violation mode, there's a way to automatically recover it. And Cisco likes this question. There's a way to automatically recover shutdown when a port has been put in error disabled state because it violated your port security configuration. So how do you do that? How do you automatically recover if a port has violated your port security config? How do you do that?
Uh, I know I manually do it.
Yep,
Error disable recovery.
yep. A good one, good one. Who said that? Who said error disable recovery?
That's me.
Yeah, nice one. So can you expand a bit more on that?
Um, just whenever it does receive one of those error or the port becomes disabled,
Mm-hmm.
then you define which recovery mode, and you have to define which violation type it was.
Yep, good one, very good one. So it's error disabled recovery. Enable.
I think it's error disable recovery cause, and then the violate. I don't think you have to say violation, but maybe the violation type, right?
Yeah, yeah. You have to say the violation type. Yeah. Okay, we'll come into that when we start doing the demonstration. Okay, so the next concept that port security uses to do what it does is a concept of maximum. So what does this concept mean of maximum? So we're going
What is
left to right. Yeah, so my was official turn now. So what does the concept of maximum mean?
I officially protest this the fact that I'm next. Officially, I'm protesting that.
So yeah, I think
The concept.
I think we accept your protest. We just move back to 2 more spots. We just go back 2 more steps and we
Let's overthrow
Since we're
this
talking about
list.
secure Macs, let's just go back to Mac, Mark.
yeah,
No.
exactly. Exactly. That's like a good actually that makes logical sense. I mean
Oh no,
Makes no sense to me. I don't know how you came up with that.
Maximum Mark.
no, okay,
Max.
I'll answer the question.
No, I
Matt's my
can't
guy.
hear
Matt's
you.
my guy.
I can't hear
Matt's
you.
my
I have
guy.
bad connection going on here.
You
Uh,
need to disable the port security so you can connect.
I think the concept of about maximum just states what's the maximum number of um, communication or devices that can connect or be allowed to connect to the port. And you use that in real sense, in offices where you have like your PC connected to the phone
hmm
and both connected to like or your phone connected to your PC, regardless of how your setup is,
Yeah.
and both connected to like the switch port.
hmm
So that's exactly how that concept is, so that you can have maybe multiple devices either connected at the same time
Yeah.
to that port, or you can have a free range of, but like maybe let's say we have 6 people or 6 different devices that can connect at the same time. So
Yeah.
it's just a maximum number of devices that can communicate,
Yeah.
or maximum number of devices we allow to communicate on
Yeah.
that port.
Yeah. Good one. Excellent. Yeah, good one. So you just so maximum. So let's say we'll go and we'll define switch ports. The command is switch port security, and then we can define any one of these. We can define the mode, the violation, the maximum. So if we say maximum is 2, so what that means for dynamic is this. It means it will learn the first 2 MAC addresses that communicate on that port. Yeah. Um, if it's static, you put that in manually. If it's sticky, it learns the first 2 that communicate on that port. But that takes us to the next concept of the timer, because the timer comes in with dynamic a lot. So what's the concept of timer in this situation? What does it do? What does it mean? So who's next? So I'm the one that's next. Do you want me to answer, or should we just go back to Alex?
I mean, it would seem like how long that
Yeah, good
the
one.
list or secure MAC address stay.
Good one, exactly. So timer just simply means how long. So in other words, once I learn a MAC address, or once I learn a secure MAC address, how long should I keep it in the secure MAC address table? So how long do I keep a secure MAC address in the table? So again, you remember these are 2 different tables. This is not the same as the MAC address table of the switch. This is a secure MAC address table of the switch port. So let's bring up packet tracer. Let's bring up packet tracer. So this is not the same as, let's go, okay, let's bring up packet tracer. Enable conf interface fans 01. So we can go switch port, port security, and we can set a MAC address, the maximum, the violation, of course, because this packet tracer, which is why we mentioned this one. So let's go to this to this guy, this GNS3 guy. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if I go interface E00, actually, let's make this bigger so that it's not gonna be change settings, appearance, change the font. Let's make it to bigger font. Yeah, this is better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if you go switch ports, port security, and then you can see aging there, which is the timer. So there are two types of aging that we can set. So if we go aging, so we can set the time, which basically means, yeah, keep it for this time and throw it away. But we can also set the type. So the type, absolute and inactivity. So does anyone know what those two mean?
Absolute would be like, a set amount no matter what, and activity would be based on any traffic going over the port.
Exactly. So those are two that we can set. So we can say, hey, the timer that we're setting is no matter what, after 5 minutes, clear the secure MAC address table, no matter what. After 5 minutes, clear it. Or we can say, yeah, after 5 minutes, clear it if there's no activity. So those are the two types of timers that we can set. So we can set an absolute timer or an inactivity timer. The timers work for dynamic. For static, the timer can also work, but you have to add, there's a particular configuration that you have to add for this to work on static. So if I go switch port security, aging, static, enable aging for configured secure addresses. So actually, you can clear out statically entered MAC addresses. So you as an admin, you've configured the MAC address on a switch port as a secure MAC address. You can configure the timer to clear it out. But if you want it to work for static, you have to use this command, static.
So that might be good for like if you have someone who's going to use that port for a day.
Exactly. Exactly, good one. Good thinking of that's a good use of that. So you can say, even though I'm configuring it manually, you know, age it out after this particular time. But the thing is, timer will never, ever, 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 ever apply to sticky MAC address, sticky secure MAC addresses. It will apply to dynamic. You can configure it to apply to static, but never, ever will it apply to sticky. So it doesn't, no matter what, it doesn't apply to sticky MAC addresses. So yeah, so I think we've basically like just covered the whole thing about about port security. The other thing that we said we want to talk about, which we've already talked about, is like the whole AAA, which is like not really CCNA. You know, that's like CCNA security.
Is
Yeah.
limiting like the data rates on a port in CCNA or?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's in CCMP too. I'm still reading the CCMP switch book. I'm currently in chapter 3, but I've not come across it yet.
And like if you want to protect an authorized user from like draining all the bandwidth and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I know we can use.
Oh, QoS.
No. So there's another one. I'm not sure if it's on Cisco though, but I've seen it on Brocade where we can actually go and say you're limiting the broadcast. You're saying you can't send no more than 255 broadcasts can come out of this port in a second. So you can limit the multicast on a switch port. So that's to prevent a situation where there's like a broadcast storm coming out from a switch port, or where there's a multicast storm coming out from a switch port. So I know we use that in our environment, but we use Brocade switches. Yeah, not in
Oh,
packet tracer, exactly. Not in packet tracer. But I'm thinking if Brocade has that feature, Cisco will also have that feature.
yeah,
But
but you have to have special switches for that. Like you said, futures
yeah,
is the thing Cisco sells.
yeah, yeah. So I've
But
I've
by the
not
way,
yeah, carry on, bro.
can you help me test a command where the packet tracer does that?
Yeah,
The show error disable record no
I
show
don't think so.
error.
I don't
Try it.
think
Let's see. Show error.
I don't think packet tracer supports the error disabled recovery one. So we'll need to use
Okay.
this one.
Show error. Oh, IOU does it. Okay.
Yeah,
Show error
yeah,
disable recovery.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So it's safe for me to assume I'm not going to see this in the exam, right?
They may ask the theory question. They probably won't
Oh,
ask you to do the practical, but
oh
I know
man.
Cisco likes like port security question. They like asking like maybe one or two of them.
Yeah, I know. Well, I
Yeah.
just hope they don't ask me a question because if I don't get to practice this often,
Yeah.
uh, it's gonna make it difficult for one
I mean,
to.
does everyone have GNS3 configured already? Because we've run out of our time for discussion today. Does anyone have GNS3 configured already, or should we just use the next practical time to configure GNS3, the new GNS3?